All right, one and two. Wait, there's a better way. Hey everyone, my name is Martin, and in a recent video, I showed you how I assembled and then installed a new kind of beehive with 2 queens. In this video, I'll show you how this hive has progressed week by week, as well as share with you how this beehive is making me a better beekeeper. But first, I want to share something fascinating about how honeybees operate. You see, a colony actually acts like a single superorganism. One of their most incredible feats is maintaining the brood nest at a constant temperature, right around 95 degrees Fahrenheit or 35 degrees Celsius, almost like how a mammal can regulate its internal temperature. If the nest gets too hot, the bees actively fan their wings to circulate air and cool it down. If it gets too cold, they cluster together and shiver their flight muscles to generate heat. This climate control is exactly why we start our new package in a smaller volume with fewer frames. By packing them into a tight space, the bees require much less energy to maintain that perfect brood temperature, giving the developing colony the best start possible. Now let's take a look 1 week later to see how the bees have settled in. I'll start by opening the lid on the Saskatraz side. That's the name of the breed. I'll remove the glass viewing panel and then remove the plastic frame guards. I got a lot of questions in the last video about these frame guards. Their purpose is to prevent the bees from gluing the frames to the hive body, which they would normally do in a Langstroth setup. Next, I'll pull the follower board out, and as a reminder, I had installed these packages onto only 3 frames because it's easier for the bees to keep their brood area warm when there's a smaller space, and generally, I find that bees tend to do better with a smaller volume when the colony is still small. So next I'll go ahead and slide out all 3 of the frames, and the first thing I'll do is remove the queen cage. This little box held a queen when I first installed the package, and it looks like she has now made it out into the main hive area. Now let's pull the first frame out. It looks like the bees have fully drawn out this frame with wax, and I'm seeing a mix of larvae, eggs, some pollen, and some nectar. This is an excellent indicator. It's exactly what I want to see when doing an inspection. The developing larvae tell me that the colony is growing, and the nectar and pollen tell me that they're out foraging as well. With the fresh eggs on this frame, there's also a strong chance that the queen is nearby, so I'll take a few extra minutes to scan for her. And there she is. It was really easy to find her because of the white mark on her thorax. Okay, so I'll very carefully place this frame back, being extra mindful of the queen. Now I can look at the rest of the frames. As I pulled the next frame out, a chunk of wax fell off of it. It looks like the bees didn't attach the wax to the frame, but instead had built it with a gap. Sometimes beekeepers call this crazy comb, and in this case, it's likely because the 2 frames where the queen cage was weren't close enough together. In any case, this frame looks to generally have more developing larvae on it, so I'll put it back for now. This is a pretty nice piece of clean, fresh wax, so I'll keep it and melt it down for my own collection. Finally, we can look at the last frame, and it looks like the bees have gone full crazy comb on this one. There's a lot of areas where the wax isn't attached to the frame, leaving cavities behind it, and it sticks out really far too, eating into the space of the next frame. I need to do some renovations here so that the bees will build neat, organized comb that I can properly manage. So first what I'll do is shake off as many bees as I can. With fewer bees, you can really see just how messed up this comb is. Whichever bee architected this one is getting a demotion. Interestingly, I do see a couple of queen cups, which are these larger, more elongated cells. But there's nothing in them as far as I can tell. They're empty. The bees can use these queen cups to raise another queen if they so desire, and it's possible it means they're planning to. Maybe they don't like their current queen? In any case, to fix this crazy comb, I'll just basically rip it all up and start sticking it back onto the frame. I'll do this to anything that's not really attached to the foundation. I don't have to be super precise, and it's fine to sort of smash the wax back on there. The bees will figure it out and complete the renovation themselves. Okay, so I'll wrap up by giving these bees 1 extra frame to draw out, since it looks like they've almost finished the 3 that I started them on. I'll just tuck that one in the back, put the crazy frame in after it, and then push all the frames in the follower board back into place. Then I'll put the frame guards back on, replace the viewing panel, and close the lid. Next, we can look at the Buckfast side. As a reminder, the Buckfast breed is supposed to be more docile than Saskatraz, but may not be as mite resistant. So as I pull the first frame out, you can see that this colony has only partially built out wax on it. It's mostly undeveloped, and this makes sense to me because the package was definitely smaller than the other one when I installed them. Next, I'll grab the queen cage and inspect it. Looks like the queen is not here, so she must have also moved out into her new home. I can set the now empty queen cage aside and pull out the second frame. It looks like there's lots of developing larvae on this frame. This is great. It tells me that the colony will add a lot more bees to its workforce in the coming weeks. I'll put that frame back and quickly look at the last frame. It looks like this one also has a lot of brood, so we're in a pretty good position. I did some quick scans for the queen, but I didn't find her. It's not a big deal though. I know she's in here and healthy because we have lots of developing brood and eggs. So I'll put everything back together and eagerly wait to check them again in a week's time. Alright, so it's now 1 week later, 2 weeks after we've installed the packages, and I'm assembling some extra frames here because I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to give the bees more space in this inspection, just based on their progress from last week. Pro tip, if you want to speed up the rate that the bees draw out new frames, you can brush extra melted beeswax onto them. I'm not doing that this time, but I definitely have noticed that it works if you do decide to do that. Okay, so let's take a look at our Saskatraz bees first on this beautifully sunny day. I'll give the bees just a little smoke, as I'm definitely noticing that the Saskatraz colony has a bit more attitude than their buckfast neighbors. The smoke just calms the bees down by temporarily preventing them from communicating through pheromones. Alright, so as I'm looking at the first frame, I can see that the brood is developing nicely from last week, but wait a second, what's this? It's another queen cup, and as I look closer, there's actually a developing larva in there. You can see the worker bees are occasionally sticking their heads in to check on or feed their princess, so it looks like they're raising a new queen after all. I guess they really didn't like the old queen. Alright, let's keep this inspection moving. I'm sliding out the second frame, and so far it looks like the bees haven't really been able to glue the frames to the hive yet, so it looks like the frame guards are doing their job. Okay, so on this frame, it looks like there's a bunch of extra wax that they've built along the bottom. I think I'll go ahead and remove it because this colony has already shown they're prone to crazy comb, and I don't want them to get any funny ideas. So I'll just use my smoker to drive most of the bees off of it, and then use my hive tool to scrape it off, and whoops, I dropped it into the hive. My bad. I'll just reach in and carefully pull it out. You know, I haven't noticed many fresh eggs on either of these frames, and I haven't seen the queen, even though she's marked, so it's possible the bees have already killed her. Well, in any case, I'll put this frame back and then slide the next frame out. Remember, this frame was the crazy frame. Let's see how they did with their renovations. Oh boy, okay. It's still kind of funky, you guys. Nice try. I mean, it's definitely a lot better than last time, but the craftsmanship leaves something to be desired. I'm also seeing that they built out several more queen cups, and these ones also seem to be charged, meaning there's a larva in them. So I'm not going to go ripping this crazy comb out just yet, as I don't want to disrupt the requeening process. I will take a second though to straighten out this one piece of comb that's sticking out on the corner. Okay, so now let's put this frame back and quickly look at the last frame, which I had just added only a week ago. It looks like they've started to add a little wax. I'd expect them to finish pulling this frame out in a week or two. I'll go ahead and give them 2 more frames, and this time I'll do some slight checkerboarding. That just means that I'll put one of the empty frames in between the existing comb. It helps the bees to draw out the frame faster, and it also helps the colony feel less congested, which can help with their instinct to swarm. More on that in a future video. So I'll put this frame back together, making sure to pack the frames tightly, and move on to the buckfast side. Okay, so pulling the first frame out, I'm delighted to see that not only have the bees finished pulling out this frame, the queen has also laid a lot of eggs. You can clearly see them here inside each cell. In fact, with this many eggs, I bet the queen is nearby. I have to look more closely for her because she isn't marked, but sure enough, there she is. She's longer and wider than the worker bees, and she's a beautiful golden color. Okay, so I'll very carefully place this frame back. The next 2 frames both have capped over brood and some honey and pollen as well. I must say, the buckfast bees seem to be much better behaved than the Saskatraz side. They're gentle, neat, productive, and they didn't murder their own queen. Okay, so before I wrap up the inspection for this week, I'm going to actually try out a brand new kind of mite treatment called Noroa. I'll release a whole video about Noroa later and why you need to treat for mites, but for now, let's just say that this medication works by stopping the mites from reproducing. It's sort of like mite birth control. With this in mind, spring is the perfect time to apply this treatment, especially just 2 weeks after installing a new package, because the mite population is already low. This will ensure that the mite population stays low. Alright, so it's now 1 week later, 3 weeks after installing the bees, and I'm just lighting up my smoker to do this inspection. Normally, I wouldn't use smoke on newly started colonies, but the Saskatraz bees are a bit rambunctious, and especially without a queen, bees can get defensive. So, I'll smoke the hive entrance a bit to distract the guards, and then open the hive. Nice, it looks like they ate all of the mite medication. I should mention that you should always follow the label on any kind of mite treatment, and in order to complete this treatment, I need to give them a second bag, which I'll do at the end of the inspection. So let's pull the first frame out. It's essentially untouched. The bees haven't drawn any wax out yet, but that's fine. Let's keep looking. Alright, on the second frame, I'm seeing that they've capped off the queen cup. Well, now we can call it a queen cell. Look at how it sticks out a bit and looks almost like a peanut. You can tell based on the placement on the frame that this is a supersedure cell, meaning the bees aren't planning to swarm. They're just looking to replace a failing queen. I also see a bunch of polished cells with no eggs, which tells me they probably don't have a laying queen right now. Let's put this frame back, being mindful of the queen cell, and look at the other new frame that we added. It looks like they've just started pulling this frame out. It'll probably be done next week, but for now, let's put everything back. I remember seeing more queen cups last week further in the nest, and I don't want to disturb them at this critical stage. So let's take a quick look at the buckfast bees. It looks like they've also eaten the entire bag of medication. Nice. Putting that aside, we can inspect the first frame, and whoa, it looks like they've already started to pull out the far side of this frame, and are about halfway done on the other side. Okay, the next frame has one side fully drawn out, and it's absolutely covered in eggs. That's just a beautiful sight to see. These bees are officially outperforming their sassy Saskatraz neighbors. With this many eggs, I'll definitely keep my eyes peeled for the queen. Okay, I'm not seeing her, so let me flip the frame over. Ah, there she is, hanging out on the edge of drawn comb. I get the sense that she's waiting for her daughters to make fresh cells for her to lay in. It really is such a treat to see the queen. I could watch her all day. Alright, let's keep this hive inspection moving. I'll very carefully replace this frame, being mindful of the queen, and move on to the next frame. This next one has a bunch of capped over brood, and also a few rows of nectar and honey at the top. Looks like the bees are raising a bunch of drones, or male bees, on that extra wax at the bottom. I can tell they're drones because the cells are larger, and I've also found that it's pretty normal for the bees to make drones below the frame like that. I'll leave these drone cells intact because I like how these buckfast bees are behaving, and I'd like to spread their genetics. You can see on this frame it's pretty similar, a good amount of capped brood and some drone cells hanging off the bottom. An interesting thing here is that the middle is actually empty. These would be the first wave of bees that recently hatched. It takes 21 days for an egg to become a worker bee, so we're right on the mark at a 3-week inspection. Okay, let's put everything back together. I think I've seen enough. I'll just make sure to tightly fit the frames together to help remind the bees to keep the comb neat, and then close everything up. Before I call it a day, I still need to give the bees their second and final mite treatment. I'll just peel off the label of each of the pouches to expose the tiny feeding ports. Again, this is a brand new kind of mite control, so stay tuned for a future video where I do a deep dive into the mode of action for how this exciting new technology works. For now though, I'll just squeeze the pouch a little to get some of it to come out, which will help the bees start feeding on it faster. Then I'll just lay it above the brood area like this, and then I'll do the same for the other pouch for the other colony. Now, as promised, I'd like to reflect on how this beehive can make someone a better beekeeper, or at least how it makes me a better beekeeper. You see, I'm not a professional beekeeper. In fact, this is just a fun hobby for me. With that in mind, when I get home from a long day of work, I'm not usually super stoked to go inspect a bunch of hives, taking apart the whole thing and then putting it all back together. This is especially true when it's later in the season, it's hot, there's lots of bees, and a lot of boxes to deal with. With this design, I'm much more interested and excited to actually do the keeping part of beekeeping, by which I mean I'm much more likely to actually do an inspection. I can keep my inspection time to a minimum, and it feels like it's much less invasive to the colony in general. Of course, having the 2-queen setup makes it all the more fun too. If nothing else, being more excited about keeping bees is well worth it for me. If you made it this far into the video, I would like to give you a special thank you. You're the reason that I'm making these videos. I'm trying to grow my channel so that I can make more videos like these, or even better videos. So if you enjoyed this one and you want to see more like it, consider subscribing, like the video, leave a comment. It really does help the channel, and it also makes my day. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.